Hey everyone, it's Lewis. Today's video is a very special one. It will showcase a team of absolute legends who have been with me on my journey with bone cancer since the very beginning. When I was making the grand plan for this video, I actually became quite overwhelmed with emotion. It's going to be a tough one to get to the very end of this video without crying, but we shall see. But before I actually tell you who these people are and what they do, we do actually need some context. So let's get into it. My conditions have not only left me feeling very isolated in a medical environment, but very much in a personal setting too. With rarity comes three major themes: uncertainty, unfamiliarity, and the overall unknown. That means growing up with conditions like a bone disease that only accounts for 2% of all bone diseases, and a bone cancer that only accounts for 1% of all bone cancers, you're almost always seeing a different medical professional every single appointment. And as a child, let alone an adult, it is absolutely terrifying. You know, children rely on familiarity as it gives that sense of safety, security, and control. So when you're constantly seeing new doctors, nurses, and medical staff who almost always bring you bad news, you start to feel very doomed, and it's very hard to keep hope. You can really start to feel anxious about attending the hospital at all. And that was me before this very moment. This day was my first time ever attending a plaster appointment, and it wasn't going to be a straightforward one. I'd quickly been booked in that afternoon due to my biopsy stitches becoming stuck to my plaster cast sock, which of course caused me extreme amounts of discomfort. Imagine every single time I moved, the cast sock would come with my leg because they were now joined with the stitches. It pains me to even think about. Well, there I was once again, an 8-year-old in another new department, about to have something done to me that I'd never have done to me before. So of course, anxiety struck me down once again. That was until a gentleman with a northern accent came into the room. A man who was actually training at the time. A man called Derek. He spoke softly and asked what was wrong, to see how he and the team could help. It was actually my mum who answered for me because I was very shy. And my mum explained about my cast discomforts. So Derek and his then boss got to work. Now my cast was one of those full-length jobbies, you know, the ones that are from like halfway down your foot all the way to below your knee. And that is of course to allow for healing after an operation. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be easy to get off, but I definitely didn't expect what came next. In this machine came being dragged along by Derek. And I was like, that looks kind of interesting. It kind of looked like a droid from Star Wars. And that's what I was hoping it was. But no, how wrong I was. It was an actual saw. A literal saw. So you can imagine the terror on my face as I tried to get up from my chair with this one leg in a full cast, trying to like hop straight for the door. Yeah, I wasn't going anywhere, mate.
Oh, hell no!
Okay, that was a bit of an over-exaggeration, but you can imagine, it's pretty scary hearing the word saw and then knowing that that is going to be used on your body somewhere. But Derek reassured my mum and I that this saw was completely safe. It was completely different to the ones you see Bob the Builder using, the ones you see like people in B&Q using. You know, this was going to be one that purposely stops before it actually penetrates skin. It doesn't even spin, it just vibrates so quickly, about 2 or 3 millimeters either side, so that it can just trim through plaster casts and other medical bits and bobs, but not skin, because skin is nice and rubbery. You know, we just kind of go back and forth. It would just look a bit weird. The guys got to work cutting down both sides of my plaster cast. What they were trying to do was lift the bottom and the top part as different segments and then exposing the wounds on top. As I said at the start of the video, my stitches were properly stuck to the inside of my cast sock. So you can only imagine how much pain I was in. A nurse had to be called down from the ward above and she had to come and basically redress my wounds. And then Derek got to work making me a brand new cast. It was here I saw for the first time how a plaster cast is actually made, and I found the process really cool. It was like seeing how armour is created, and as I forever have to wear a cast for armour's exact purpose, protection, I felt pretty badass having my own sort of armourer in this instance. I didn't realise it then, And I don't think Derek or my mum could have realised it either. But that was definitely not going to be my last time in the plaster room. Due to my conditions, my tibia is extremely fragile. So that means I have to wear a plaster cast 24/7, even when I'm not even injured. I can't even begin to estimate how many times I've actually visited the plaster room now. But if I was going to make a random sort of assumption, a little bit of a guess, I would say it's definitely over 100 times, without a doubt. How many times have I actually been to the plaster room, Derek?
Over the years, mate, way too many times. Jug off.
A few weeks had passed and I was finally ready to be freed from that overly large plaster cast that was helping me heal from my biopsy. But I also needed another new plaster made for just everyday use, for that 24/7 protection that I was talking about earlier. And that task, of course, once again fell upon the plaster room. The plaster room guys would have to create something for me that could be removed on and off, easy peasy, but still provide me the same protection as one of those full-length casts that were enclosed around my leg. This was going to be no easy feat, but they managed to do it. They came up with the clamshell. I have to Photoshop one on my hand. I'm wearing my only one right now, so this will have to do. Hopefully I can do this well. Oh god. Called this, of course, due to its ability to open and close much like a clam does. What's funny to me about this name though is the fact that with a clamshell, obviously you open it up and hopefully there's a pearl inside. That's very valuable. But with my leg, you open the cast up and what do you get? Bone cancer. Which is actually probably more valuable than a clam's pearl, especially to some doctors. But personally, yeah, I'm going to stick with a pearl. I've been wearing these casts for over 13, 14 years now, which is absolutely mind-blowing. I saw your judging eyes then. It is not the same cast. I have them regularly changed. I'm not that dirty. Jeez. Being serious for a moment though, genuinely, I wouldn't be able to safely leave the house if it wasn't for these casts. You know, the amount of times I've had what would have been tragic accidents, hadn't it have been for me wearing this cast, is too many times to count. So to say I'm grateful is a mega understatement. And with them, I'm able to do simple everyday activities like bathing, showering, things we actually take for granted. And honestly, it is a true blessing to be able to have this plaster cast. But today I didn't want to just talk about the physicalities of how the plaster room have helped me. I also wish to talk about how they've gone above and beyond for me as an individual living with bone cancer. So let's get into that too. I'd like to take a moment to shine the spotlight again on Derek. You know, I met this man when I was 8 years old. It was the very start of my cancer journey, the very start of my entire medical journey. My first visit to the plaster room in that July was certainly not my last visit to the plaster room. But you know what? I didn't mind. Plaster appointments became the only appointments I actually felt comfortable going to, and still are the only appointments I feel comfortable going to. And that is because of Derek. From day one, he made me feel like I wasn't just another statistic walking through the door, or hopping through the door. You know, he treated me like a human being who could laugh, joke, and have fun even whilst being in hospital. Having my plaster changed became a very regular thing for me. You know, in the first few years of my medical journey, I was going to the plaster room every 6 to 8 weeks for a new one. And that was because I was outgrowing all of my casts so quickly. Every single time I'd have an appointment there, it was like I was going to visit my uncles. My mum and I would talk to Derek about my health, family matters, and just random things, to be honest with you. But it just became nice to have a hospital appointment where I knew the outcome would be okay. And as things became harder and rockier with my conditions, my mental health started to decline. And once again, these plaster appointments became a place of sanctuary. I can remember quite a few standout occasions with the plaster room, memories that have stuck with me all these years later. And I thought, why not add them to this lovely video? So, this first memory involves another legend in the plaster room by the name of Steve. Now, Steve trained up with Derek during my medical journey and became a member of the team. This one particular day, I'd had a plaster appointment just after school. You know, we just got in from the school run and I was absolutely starving. And my mum was too. The guys asked us how we were doing that evening, and just in passing conversation, my mum and I said, you know, we're doing good, but we're hungry. So, Derek's still patching me up, he's still fixing this new cast up for me. and Steve vanishes into the sort of storeroom for a good few minutes or so. Then pops his head around the corner with these 2 tubs of chocolate under each arm. You know, like the ones you get at Christmas that are like the size of your head. Yeah, those ones. And he's like, well, he always had the best energy. And he's like, oh, you said you were hungry. So, you know, the department got these for Christmas, but, you know, we're supposed to be on diet, so you guys eat them. Derek had now left Mum and I to it. You know, the plaster was drying and he had other people to see. So my leg is sat there in a stirrup. I'm sat on the chair, you know, for my procedure. And my mum sat next to me. Both of us eating these chocolates that are essentially Christmas presents for the entire department. Feeling so guilty. It was ridiculous. But as we're like, you know, I was probably in my third chocolate down. Steve comes back around the corner. He's like, everything all right? You know, I've got some biscuits around here too somewhere if you want some. Oh my god. I must have only been about 11 years old in this moment, but that memory has stuck with me for absolutely ever, and it forever will. It's so funny. Another memory that stays with me is when I was actually about to go up to secondary school. So I must have been, like 12 and a half, like turning 13 or something. So I'm after a fresh new plaster to go up to secondary school with, to look nice and fresh, you know, nice and clean, ready for the secondary school ladies. Derek managed to fit me into his schedule, and so once again, I was there on the chair being asked which colour I'd like for my cast. You do get a choice, which is very cool, and usually it is a good choice. Usually being the operative word there for sure. So there I am, on the chair, you know, asked my colour. I'm like 13 years old, 12 and a half maybe. I'm thinking I'm the shit. I'm about to go up to secondary school, dude. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty cool. So I'm like, yeah, Derek, I'll take a pink one. Like, you know, giving a little smirk, a little side eye, kind of like, I own this place now. Well, Derek being Derek, decided to humble me very quickly. And actually came back in the room with 2 lots of the pink packaging for the plaster cast stuff. And just starts wrapping my leg in neon pink. Neon pink. It was like, I don't know, it was like blinding pink. And yes, I did have to start secondary school with that cast. It was so nonchalant. It was the most nonchalant cast I've ever had. Of course it wasn't. Goodness me. But the last occasion I wanted to talk about today was actually when I broke my leg when I was 14. I was rushed to the hospital in a very bad way. I was in an ambulance, you know, I got taken in by the paramedics. Things were not looking good at all. I was taken in for a quick examination, a quick x-ray, and it was at this point I should have actually been sent off for realignment surgery there and then. But the doctors made the decision to instead plaster my leg to take the pain away. And who was it that came to my aid? Of course it was the plaster guys. You know, just being there in that A&E bed, waiting in absolute agony for help was horrible. That feeling is horrible. You are so hopeless and vulnerable in that situation. But seeing recognisable faces coming around the corner, the recognisable face of Steve and the legendary Ian as well.
He's a little bit whiter than he was. Yeah.
It put my mind to rest. You know, I felt like I was in safe hands. You know, I'll always be thankful for that. I really will be. And as soon as they started plastering my leg, I could almost feel the pain kind of like evaporating from my body. You know, I wasn't like I wasn't in pain at all. It just wasn't as excruciating as it was before. And so there I am on the bed, like, oh. And I just like smile as the relief slowly comes over me. And the nurse, she wasn't happy about that. She's like, hey, we didn't get a grin like that. And I was thinking to myself in that moment, you know, the plastering guys have already been with me for so much. And there I am at my most vulnerable now, a 14-year-old on a bed, feeling helpless and hopeless. And who's at my aid once again? The guys from the plaster room. So as you can see, interactions with these guys aren't always pain-free. Even having my cast routinely changed is painful, but it's having that familiarity with the same staff, having a strong and funny rapport with them that has made all the difference to me growing up, and still does to this day. My plaster appointments are of course important to me physically, but they are just as important to me mentally as well. I actually said to Derek the last time I was at the plaster room that being able to talk to him and his team openly and honestly, whilst also having a laugh with them over these many years that I've had bone cancer now, it's been like therapy for me. You know, I remember an incident that happened a couple years ago. I must have been about 18, and I was up at my hospital in Oxford, seeing a doctor I'd never seen in my life before. He didn't know me, he didn't know my case, he hadn't read my notes. It was an entirely new experience for basically both of us. He brought me into his room in a bit of an emergency manner. You know, I got brought up to Oxford in an emergency, and he sat me down and said, you know, Lewis, you've got cancer. Now, at the time, I assumed that he meant I have cancer somewhere else in my body. But because he was so in the dark about everything, he'd actually just re-diagnosed me with the same condition. But there was no context, there was no clarity to say otherwise in that moment. So I left that appointment thinking, oh my God, I am the unluckiest man on the planet because I now have cancer in not one but two places on my body. I'm done for, you know? Everything I've ever been trying to move forward with mentally has just come crashing down around me, and I'm now back to square one. It really hit me hard mentally. But as I say, it was a huge mix-up. The doctor in Oxford had completely made a massive error and basically re-diagnosed me with the same condition I'd already had for so many years. So, as you can imagine, I had gone through this huge amount of pain and sadness to complete and utter fury. I was so annoyed that someone can make such a big error. You know, it's not like you diagnose someone with cancer on the willy-nilly. It's not something that just happens day to day, you know. That's a big deal. So I was annoyed. A few days later, I had to have another routine plaster cast appointment, which was actually quite lucky because I got to speak to Derek about all that had gone on in the days prior. Being able to speak openly with him, you know, not only a man who's a medical professional, but someone who understands me and my situation, but also listens, just listens, you know. It is so valuable, and it was so valuable to me on that day, and it is still so valuable to me here and now. I left that appointment with a much clearer head and a weight lifted off my shoulders for sure, all because of a simple chat. When I was growing up, my family and I were not supported with my cancer. Charities I should have been referred to, I was never referred to. Support services I was supposed to be under, it didn't happen. So the plaster department became my only support network, specifically the guys who work there. And that's a task they are not paid or trained to do. They didn't even have to do it out of their own, you know, human nature. They could have just done my plaster and out the door, job done. But no, just the compassion, the being there for me and my family when times were really hard. You know, it actually does make me quite emotional. I'm feeling some tears coming up right now. Whew. But no, it's yeah, I will forever be grateful to them all. This department, Derek's department now, really does go unseen, and in my opinion, it's the backbone of the hospital. And I really hope this video goes mental because I just want to shed some light on this truly vital part of the hospital that you'll never really hear about. The team in the plaster room are genuinely like family to me. You know, they've been there for me through thick and thin. Genuinely, my thanks are never going to be enough. But thank you so much to you guys. I really appreciate everything you've ever done for me. And I hope this video does blow up so you can actually get the credit you deserve. And please don't make it awkward the next time I come in. I will see you guys in a few months for my next appointment. I also just wanted to quickly say a massive thank you to a man called Paul, who I've been liaisoning with for this video, and he gave me access to the plaster room with Derek to go and actually film some stuff in the hospital itself, which is a very cool experience. So a huge thank you to Paul. Thank you so much for allowing me to create this sort of homage video to the plaster room and all they do. Thank you. Well, there we go. I've been trying to create this video for such a long time, and I finally got around to doing it. I'm so happy. If you guys have found this video to be educational or anything like that, please drop a like on it. That would get this video recommended to more people out there, so we can hopefully give the plaster room the credits they deserve. If you're interested in staying tuned for future Let's Be Real content, please consider subscribing today, and follow me up on the social medias as well. All the links are in the description below. But I will see you guys at the next video coming very soon. Hopefully the wheel story will be following up shortly. Drop a like I said already. Stay healthy, take the best of care, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye for now. Thank you so much.